Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We're waiting for a couple of more panelists, but we'll get started soon. Oh, hey, Thomas. Thank you for joining us. Oh, there you go. I think this is good for our panelists. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll get started with the webinar now.
Excellent.
I
Hello,
do
everyone.
apologize. I'm sorry for my lateness. I literally had a check.
No worries. It happens. The wonders of virtual work and virtual convenings.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today, along with our esteemed panelists, as we explore and discuss media, foster youth, and the power of authentic representations. My name is Sanaz Adesafar, and I lead Storyline Partners, a collective of cultural consultants that advises on issues and communities and entertainment narratives. The Center for Scholars and Storytellers is a valued member of the collective, continually engaging in rigorous research and calling in the perspectives and experiences of youth and children in our current moment. Stories have real world implications. Through language and visual aesthetics and cues, we contextualize and navigate our world. Our 24/7 news cycle and social media algorithms introduce many audiences to the first initial feed of narratives. Our ability to understand fact from fiction, science, real policy solutions, or cultural representations need to be continually updated and informed. Entertainment and cultural production allow people to learn and mimic language and behavior from what's broadcast on our screens and mobiles. Advocacy efforts orient toward representing the intersectionality of issues and communities and mindfully promoting dialogue and understanding about the people and world around us. We have seen the evolution and some successes in how gender, disability, and diaspora communities of color are being depicted in pop culture storytelling. The confluence of culture, policy, and people in relation to Hollywood storytelling is inescapable. The interplay between advocacy and media representations is crucial in order to avoid bias, misunderstandings, harm, and to produce narrative repair. We don't shy away from relevant topics in our contemporary experiences. The feedback loop between the representations in Hollywood and policymaking at various levels highlight the influential nature of stories. Both industries borrow from each other to contextualize the world we inhabit. Depending on power dynamics and resources, certain actors are promoted to maintain the status quo or push for change. As advocates, we are intermediaries, championing for our communities, issues, and the world to be presented authentically. Stories have real world implications. Beyond raising awareness, advocacy in service of media representations is a powerful strategic tool to confront tropes, abolish stereotypes, and to weave context in the lived experiences. None of us are monoliths for our communities. Why should foster youth be any different? Around 1 in 4 adolescents is systems facing, meaning they have experience with foster care, juvenile, or immigration systems. We want to encourage new narrative considerations on this wildly important issue. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Alicia J. Hines, the Vice President of Research for CSS.
Hi, everyone. Nice to know so many of you are in the audience. Thank you so much, Sanaz, for the wonderful introduction. As Sanaz mentioned, I'm the Vice President of Research and Programs at CSS, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our research that's relevant to the conversation today. First, I'd like to say thank you to all of our panelists. This is a part of our Narrative Change and Social Impact Initiative. And so our partners from First Place for Youth and the Aspen Institute are here with us. Arlena's here, Angela as well. So this is a great, incredible team that we put together to do this work and change narratives and change representations of specifically opportunity youth and foster youth on screen. We have a lot of research to kind of back up this work and make it relevant to folks, in the entertainment industry. So I would say one of the major reports that we've come out with relevant to this topic is our systems facing youth research, bridging the empathy gap. So we had an event a couple of years ago where we brought together folks from the entertainment industry, young people, people working in the systems facing youth advocacy space. An organization called Represent Justice specifically was also there. And we had a few researchers conduct a national survey to ask young people what kind of representations they're seeing of systems facing youth on screen, the kinds of relationships they have to other young people with systems who are systems facing. And then also what the gaps are kind of in their understanding and what they want to better understand and know about this population. Most young people in the survey did say that they want to see more of these representations. About 25% of that group, which aligns with our statistics around systems facing youth, were systems facing themselves. And then also so many young people have relationships to other young people who are in that experience. And so they kind of recognize what authentic representation looks like on screen, and they want to see more of it, and they want to learn more from media. Another kind of research report that we have that I think is relevant here is our authentically inclusive representation work. So that body of work started many, many years ago at the center, and we were interested in considering authentically inclusive representation and storytelling at the narrative level. A lot of folks in entertainment kind of make the business case for authentic and inclusive storytelling from, counting the number of folks on screen, how many people are represented on screen and under the line or behind the screen. And in this case, we decided to try to consider what authentic and inclusive storytelling looks like at the narrative level. So what does it mean to really represent a community in a way that is true, reflective of their experience, their embodied experience, and is informed by people with lived experience? And we work with many advocacy partners, some of which are probably on this call, including Sanaz for sure, to do this work and to rate content and to rate titles. And what we found in the first iteration was that large budget films stood to lose $32 million if they did not include authentic and inclusive storytelling and represent these stories well. We have several iterations of this work. The most recent one, we even found that young people, adolescents, are an even stronger predictor of box office success and critics performance or critics reviews. My apologies. If they consider and see authentically inclusive representation in the content that they're watching. And if they don't see it, then the titles tended to perform much less well. So we have sort of a litany of work to make the business case for authentic and inclusive storytelling and telling these stories about systems facing youth better. And then we also have a ton of research to make that case for the impact that it actually has on young people. So another study that's sort of relevant here, as well as our study on Daniel Tiger. I'm hoping some people can throw some of these in the chat. So, but I didn't have any slides for this. I was kind of stepping in for y'all to, so I apologize. But we have that study specifically, I think is a really powerful example of the impact that media can have on young people and their attitudes and ideas and behavior, which is really the premise of the center more broadly. But in that study, we surveyed about 150 young people between the ages of 13 and 16 who watched Daniel Tiger when they were younger, when they were toddlers. And we found that a large majority of them actually remember a lot of the social and emotional skills and tools that they gained from watching the show. And then also, I think about 60% of that group is saying that they're not seeing content that's giving them those kinds of skills these days. And it's not age appropriate when they are seeing it. So when they are seeing someone managing their emotions, maintaining friendships, practicing empathy in real life, a lot of teen content doesn't include that kind of guidance for young people. So this is what we found is kind of a huge white space for creators to step into. Young people are yearning for it. I think it was over 75% of that group said that they want to see that content, that they're not seeing it, and they need more help and more guidance. And much of our other research around, how young people are sort of missing this kind of education in their daily life and missing this kind of attention to these skill sets in their, educational experiences or in their families or communities are often looking to media to shape, how they're engaging with the world. And so, for example, we have another project on sexual education and reproductive health, and young people who watch more TV for that kind of content are actually less sexually empowered themselves because they're not getting a kind of authentic representation of their experience. They're not gaining new skills or new ways to think about or process their development in that way. So on the whole, as a center, I think we all understand kind of on this call as well that media has a really powerful influence on shaping young people's attitudes, and in a larger kind of social contextual framework, young people of color, Black and brown people specifically, I think there's a huge body of research that we can also reference here that shows that media has shifted perceptions of young Black men, for example, and the adultification of young Black men through the media representations that most people see. And so I think we all have a responsibility to work together to make these representations more authentic and to include that lived and embodied experience in developing storylines and in shaping characters and building out a really robust sense and a comprehensive view of this group and this population. And we understand and see all the time and have the evidence that it does make an impact and have an influence on young people and can advance and improve their well-being and their empathy and just how they exist and develop in the world. So I'm happy to answer any other questions about our research. Hopefully, again, we can share a lot of this with you. CSS has a huge body of research proving the media impact and the business case also for this kind of storytelling. And so I hope everyone finds resources through us and also through this conversation. So I think I'll pass it. Another thing I wanted to mention is our foster care playlist, which is a part of the Narrative Change and Social Impact Initiative that was released about a few weeks ago. It's almost at 1 million views on YouTube. Amy, who's on the call here, has worked really hard on this project. And so I hopefully people can share that out and see that as well and help us get to 1 million. This is a follow-up from much of our research on foster care and opportunity youth as a center. It's been one of our major focus areas for many, many years. So we're excited to continue this work and keep working with you all and partnering with you to improve those representations. Thank you. I think I'll pass it to Nina.
Thank you so much, Alicia. Now we're going to get to what we're all here for, which is our lovely panel. Now let me get these folks up on the screen and I'll have them introduce themselves instead of me trying to introduce them. Yes, could we start with Angela?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Angela Hong. I'm the content programming manager for YouTube Kids, and I had the honor of working with Amy Yalda and the CSS team to really highlight the very important and valuable playlist on foster care that they created, and we were able to bring it to YouTube Kids home screens. And thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Arlena, could you introduce yourself to us?
Hi, I'm Arlena. I'm a lived expert. I used to work in Thomas's transitional housing, and I just aged out in November. So, yeah.
Perfect. And great segue for Thomas.
Good afternoon. I'm Thomas Lee, Chief Executive Officer for First Place for Youth. And yes, Arlena was an absolute star at First Place for Youth and still a star. And we provide extended foster care throughout the state of California, as well as we have a presence in 6 states around the country. So discussions about this topic is near and dear to our hearts. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. And Jamil, are you able to join us?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. Jamil Alexander, Aspen Institute Forum for Community Solutions, Healing Center, organizing practitioner. I was a knucklehead from Philadelphia. I was blessed to be at the White House Forum for Community Solutions. Aspen Institute hired me, and here we are serving the Opportunity Youth Movement. Thanks for having me. Peace and power.
Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who may not know me, I'm the senior project director here at the Center for Scholars and Storytellers, and it's been a true joy to see Amy work with you all and create our foster care playlist as well as our narrative change and social impact program. We wanted to start with Thomas. When you think about stories most people absorb about foster youth from television and film, what do you think those stories teach audiences to believe, whether they've been system impacted or not?
So I've been thinking a lot about this question, and I'm often asked about how foster youth are depicted on the big screen as well as on TV. And the thing that strikes me is that I've seen a range of things. I think we've gotten better, a little bit better over time, but historically, there's been a clear narrative arc that young people or people that come in contact with our foster care systems are inherently flawed or damaged in some way, that they come from environments that are poverty, always poverty stricken, that somehow that they are uh, skew black, they skew from communities where there's tons of dysfunction and there's not many redeemable aspects about their character and who they are to be able to overcome that point in time. And so they're ultimately set in stone in terms of what their futures might have is that foster care, instead of just being a chapter in their life, in their book of life, it becomes the whole story. And this is thankfully, I think, for thinking about the drivers for this conversation we're having today, the work of the Center of Scholars and Storytellers is to change that once and for all. And the truer story, the much deeper story, those that have put a lot of thought and energy into it certainly tell a much bigger story. In fact, we'll just let you use history to help us tell that story. When I think about people who have been in foster care and they didn't let that define who they were, are folks like Tupac Shakur, Malcolm X, Barack Obama, Steve Jobs, Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, just to name a few people that kind of cross different generations and might be able to connect with some one or two people that might be on this Zoom with us today. And when I think about those people, their time in foster care didn't determine their full futures. In fact, like I said, it was just a chapter, but not the whole story. So I think that's where the opportunity is. And ultimately, when we think about young people and how they're depicted, or adults, how they're depicted, and when they start telling their stories on the big screen, we also have to be mindful about giving some allowance for those redeemable characteristics to be applied to all people, not just some. When I think about some of the big movie franchises like Spider-Man and Batman and Superman, again, there's always a hero component connected to them. There's a hero component connected to lots of our major superheroes, but it's something that I think we kind of easily afford. Where if I think about another TV series that I absolutely love to death called The Wire, there are four boys in there that are foster youth, and they have very different outcomes at the end of the day, but there is very little opportunity for those four boys to ultimately be given the allowance and the forgiveness and the opportunity to be able to fly through the nets of foster care and live a different life. And so that's where the struggle is. And that's where I hope that we continue to put the screws to this issue and make it better.
Absolutely. And I think we all have the homework of going and checking out The Wire too, which I agree is a phenomenal show and stands the test of time. Um, we all know also that the more specific, the better when it comes to impact. So, Jamil, what do you think is missing from most portrayals of specifically transition age youth who are often system impacted?
Yeah, thank you again for having me, Nina. Great question. And I think Doc earlier said it, Sister Dr. Alicia and even good brother Thomas, there's a level of the asset framing as far as seeing the young folks for where they are and who not necessarily the potential, but the gifts that they already have and how we cultivate and uplift, right? So you talk about me coming from the juvenile injustice system, landing and sharing my story at the White House. There was levels of like the whole opportunity movement was just basically a reciprocal relationship. We are the opportunity as young folks, but America has to provide that opportunity so that that spirit of reciprocity. And even when you talk about foster care and me coming from a broken home and then being a generational curse father, as much as I was a young parent, it literally helped me to understand what I needed to be a better father. You see what I'm saying? So there's levels of like what's missing, just meeting the young folks where they are, right? Too often times, especially right now in the society, I've been blessed to grow in a job that I love. The hustler never died. I know how to make the residual income, but the fact that I'm able, okay, not necessarily work myself out of a job, we now have consultants, young leaders in a way we're like, nothing for, nothing without. It comes from the disability community, but at the same time, when you talk about community constituents, the role that I'm able to serve at Aspen Institute, how do we support these young folks? We started off with 16 to 24. They told us, like, what we going to do after 24? Oh, okay, let's build out 25 to 32. Still listening, tapping in. So what's missing? The listening ear. The listening ear. It sounds cheesy. It sounds easy. It's not as easy as it sounds, but I'm gonna be quiet. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, UCLA, that good old Cali love. But yeah, Doc said it earlier, and even good brother said it. Like there's a level of like when you listen, and even as I shared through my lived experience going through juvie, there were some things that I was able to share through counseling that they were able to pick up and help me understand about myself, knowing that domestic violence wasn't my fault, but how do I change it now and it stops? You see what I'm saying? So much respect.
Absolutely. And we know that honestly, also seeing these kinds of stories played on screen can have such an important impact on not only kind of educationally, but personally when it comes to kind of understanding more about ourselves, understanding more about our experiences. So that's very, very true. Angela, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for your help in getting this playlist to nearly 1 million views. We know YouTube Kids reaches children at an age when they're forming some of their earliest ideas about themselves and other people. Why did you feel like this foster care playlist was something that belonged on the YouTube Kids platform, or something that you guys wanted to share and highlight with us?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for creating this playlist because it's, so incredibly valuable for our youth. And, part of my job is highlighting great content, but the content needs to exist first in order for us to feature it. So, much gratitude to you and the CSS team. At YouTube Kids, part of our goal is helping children explore the world and really understand the people in it. So to actually pull that off, we use something called our quality principles. So they're a set of 6 principles that are high quality content and then 6 for low quality content that we developed with a group called our Owls. That's our name for this amazing group of child development experts, pediatricians, and researchers like Yalda, who is on our advisory board. And we call them the Owls because they are incredibly wise. So if you know Yalda, she is super wise. And one of those high quality principles we developed with the Owls is called Shows Them the World. So basically, we want content that exposes kids to kind of different experiences and helps them find stories they can actually relate to. And that's exactly why, the CSS playlist felt really important to support. It really highlights that principle well, and it does so for 2 distinct audiences for us. So one is for the children seeing their lived experiences reflected on screen, which is incredibly validating. And like there's a video of Arlena, who's also on the panel, where she speaks about that. And, it tells kids they're seen, they're not alone. It's also inspiring. Another audience it serves are the children who are not in the system. So for them, this kind of early representation helps build empathy. I think Jamil was talking about listening. So really able to listen to others. And it creates an opportunity for them to understand their peers and kind of normalizes the idea that, family is truly built really on love and support. It's not always just a traditional mold. And then the last thing I wanted to mention that we absolutely love about the playlist is that we have these amazing role models like Bob Carrington from the NBA, Isaiah Hutchins from NFL talking about the system. And If you watch their videos, they didn't use professional cameras or lighting. Like honestly, I think both of them just shot it on their phones, and like one of them's like walking. And so to me, that's one of the beautiful parts about YouTube. It really proves that, deeply impactful content is it's totally accessible. It's often those exact videos that actually connect with a kid because it's just completely authentic. It's a deeply human view. And that's what I feel like the CSS playlist captured well here. That mix of like relatable, honest, inspiring, shared experiences that really builds a community.
Amazing. We agree. I mean, we have here at the center our annual Teens and Screen study, and actually, I think every year we've asked teens what platform they think is more authentic. And for a lot of years, YouTube came number one. I think there's an immense power of kind of seeing those experiences that are coming so close to the source because of how close creators are to the content they put on the platform. So, thank you so much, Angela. Um, Arlana, when you were growing up, did you feel like you saw people with experiences like your own? And whether you did or didn't, what did it mean to you to participate in a project where young people could tell their own stories in their own voices?
Hi. I did see people like the main ones are like Foster's, Good Trouble, which is a sequel, and Star growing up. Um, I didn't know. I feel like you guys are definitely more experienced with seeing media, but I think one thing that was missing was like there was always like a family that was willing to stick it out, which is honestly not always the case, and mostly maybe not, especially for the older foster kids. Um, but also, there's a lot of strengths that you can get from foster care. Um, you're able to connect with anybody and different things like that. But yeah, I don't want to go into the second question, but you were just saying like, what did I see?
Yeah, or like, participating in this
Oh,
huge
right,
with us. Like,
right.
how did it feel to
Well, what
participate in
if,
a thing where you got to, take a part and like tell your own stories? And a lot of the videos we had were people telling their own stories.
yeah. Well, for me, it meant kind of it was such a beautiful time that it came because it was time where I was transitioning out. So it was just such a perfect way to reflect on what that was and to kind of honor the magnitude of trauma that I went through, but also like in an empowering way, in a way that's like, look at it so you're empowered and you're not escaping it. Like it was definitely eye-opening to just really look at my story and say, well, people need to know about how many different ways this can go in foster care. It's not always that you're just gonna get an adoption family and just people are just gonna understand that you're an angry teen. Like that doesn't happen in the real world. Um, but yeah, so it was very important to me to tell my story because there's so many people that I know just like me.
We agree. And thank you so much. I think oftentimes what can happen with media is repeated narratives that are based on somebody's assumption or their own personal experience, rather than kind of a full, wide variety of different kinds of experiences that actually reflect what people actually go through versus like this idea of what one might go through in this process. So thank you so much for that. Thomas, you actually touched on this when you answered our last question, but most portrayals focus almost exclusively on trauma. Why is that sometimes harmful? And even when kind of the intention is to build empathy, like what is the problem with only focusing on trauma in stories?
I'm just going to piggyback on something Jamil said earlier, and it's good to see Jamil. I haven't seen him in years. So, and it goes back to the idea of rooting and grounding and framing a person's entire existence in the trauma itself. Like that is the most self-defining aspect of themselves. And the truth be told, this is where we have to do better to make sure that that is not the case. Um, all of us are not defined by moments in time or periods of our lives that we had no control over. There's certainly possibilities of that happening, but for the most part, when we think about foster youth, that is not the case. And so when you start to tell all stories using that kind of frame, it draws a picture and it also leads to a kind of the type of mental models where we make a quick judgment or assessment of a person based on those traumas and tend to categorize them completely that they need to be put in this particular container and assessed and assessed and and we appraise them at a particular level instead of really seeing the full person. There's a lot of issues there. It's incredibly problematic, and I think this is where the opportunity is here. As I think about what we can do a little bit differently, and what I think there's like some missed opportunities, is also telling the stories about how people overcome that trauma over time, how people have leveraged networks and friends and extended family members and people who love them and have wrapped their hearts and souls around young people in order to pull them to greater heights than most of us can even imagine. We don't tend to seem to focus on the stories because, of course, kind of like some news cycles, if it bleeds, it leads. We'd like to tell those bleeding stories instead of talking about the healing stories. And that's where the opportunity is.
I love that. And I so agree. I think sometimes we do ourselves a disservice by thinking of these stories that focus on this kind of positive impact or kind of joy as like too saccharine or too sweet. You hear about that with things like Ted Lasso all the time. When I think in some ways those are counteractions to some of those narratives, I think, and we need those too. We need those pictures of joy and happiness and,
You
you
know,
know,
here,
we need
here goes.
these. Yeah,
We'll just submit one more thing. Here's the danger with that style. When you do start telling an alternative story, it's hard for people to believe it, as if it's not one way, it can't be another. It absolutely, there are other ways of telling the story, but if we keep on banging the drum and saying it's only one way, it's going to be hard for people to make that mental adjustment and see that no, like it doesn't always have to be trauma, trauma, trauma. There can be healing, there can be triumph, there can be excellence and incredible outcomes and thriving in life, like exemplified by both Arlena and Jamil that are here on this call.
exactly. Thank you so much. Angela, when it comes to children's media, what do you believe children's media can uniquely do that research reports or advocacy campaigns sometimes don't have the same reach for?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think, research and advocacy campaigns are still it's so important. We absolutely need them. And where I think children's media can work together with the research and where it really shines, its ability kind of take that heavy, important data and then to bring it to life in a really digestible way. And I mean, I've had to read academic papers and journals for school, and even for me, they're really tough to understand. So, what children's media is able to do is really take that expert knowledge and then package it into content that anyone can understand. Actually, when I mentioned this panel to a colleague of mine, she brought up the More You Know campaigns I used to run on NBC. I guess they took research and turned them into like these quick, punchy PSAs featuring well-known stars that people actually listen to. And fun fact, I think that campaign's still running today. They have a very active YouTube page for anyone who wants to learn more. And honestly, that's exactly what the CSS playlist is kind of reminiscent of. I think the other important role that children's media plays is taking the research and then putting it into a story, that narrative form. So, storytelling is a language kids already speak and understand. So, when you weave a topic like foster care into the story, it becomes incredibly powerful. And I've seen this at Sesame Street. So, I was there before I came to YouTube in a team called Social Impact. And our whole job was creating specials and resources around what we call tough to talk about topics. But we tackled everything from divorce and incarceration to grief, all of which are available on YouTube now. But our strategy was always, to place these beloved Muppets into those exact situations. So, for example, we showed that Abby's parents are divorced, and in the episode, it walks kids through how she processed her emotions and navigated living in two different homes. We also had a storyline where, Elmo lost his uncle, which showed the stages of grief, and not just for Elmo, but for his parents too. And then in the CSS playlist, you had a video of Carly, a Sesame Street Muppet, who experiences foster care, but learns, that she too has a true place sense of belonging. And, I think that's the unique power of children's media. It's kind of able to explain beyond the paper. It actually models how to process it through relatable characters. And then it gives a safe space to view how different situations are handled, and then kind of helps them navigate, the big feelings that might come along with it, alongside like the characters they've already bonded with. And then lastly, like what Thomas was saying, it also reminded me there's like, especially on YouTube, there's an opportunity to create like different stories, like of different people, different, whatever you've gone through. It's not just like one TV show that, I mean, TV shows are great too. It's not just one TV show. There's like so many different perspectives that, people can talk about and view and learn from.
No, absolutely. I mean, we at CSS, I think a lot of what we do is try to talk about this power of media impact. And, you have like the really powerful campaigns, like, the designated driver where like Harvard worked with, like all the networks and put it into Cheers. And so the term designated driver got spread out really fast, to the smaller things that are kind of stories in larger narratives, or videos on YouTube that I think have a really personal impact on people. And on the flip side, I think helps us all, like those of us that don't necessarily have the lived experience, to check our own biases and understand a little more about the world. And I think that can open up so much, not only your empathy, but your capability of understanding too, without only leaning on folks around you. Arlena, what do you hope young people with foster care experience feel when they watch these videos? And what do you hope kids with no connection to foster care understand after seeing them?
I hope my camera's on. On my end, it's kind of black.
I
But
I
something
can't
that I
see you, but we
feel,
can still hear you. So that's
okay, good. Well, that's good. Sorry about that. I think my computer is messing up. But something I hope they feel is I hope they feel seen. And one thing I just want to mention is I think since maybe the stage of life I'm in, I think I don't mean to, when I say trauma, I want to see more different aspects of this is so they can connect to it. They're not connecting to something that doesn't relate to them, not in a to highlight the trauma, but to connect them to what they're seeing and to relate to it. Um, but I would like them to feel seen, heard, and empowered. Definitely. And for other people, what I would like for them to know is to get a sense of like real deep appreciation for what they have, and also a curiosity towards others and different ways of connecting with people, and trying to build that bridge of lack of support for others and how they can help, maybe an inspiration to be a little kinder to people.
absolutely. I love that. I think we always want to get people more curious, because I think curiosity really leads to searching for more and learning more. I think a lot of what we do here at the center is try to get people curious about narratives and stories that they might not understand, that could draw them to something more deep, more authentic, more inclusive at the end of the day. But thank you so much. Jamil, for writers and producers listening today, what's the difference between a story about systems and a story that a character, sorry, between a story about systems and a story where a character is not defined about one experience?
It's a loaded question, but and I'm literally going to piggyback, Arlena. Thank you so much, because there's a level of representation matters. Writers, producers, you talk about the systems, and I'm gonna speak from my lived experience. You talk about the injustice system as far as the outcomes being created. When you look at urban communities, when the fact that instead of building schools, they're building prisons at the second and third grade level, hometown Philly, but then more importantly, me becoming a victim to that, my lived experience, and then we're like, man, I thought it was all about me, but then coming back as a testimony and understanding the bigger picture of what the school to prison pipeline system was made for, right? So you literally talk about like my lived experience going through that, but then I appreciate big homie again, Thomas Lee, the healing that had to occur and the knowledge of self that had to occur within me to understand myself in this bigger picture. But how have those before me overcome? How do we overcome as a community, uplift each other, lifting as we can? Dr. Monique Miles, my sister supervisor, say that all the time. Because even though the system was created, how do we create systems? So, as a healing center practitioner, who I'm blessed to grow and evolve with now, we're literally creating this system to literally lift as we come. Muchas gracias. It's a lot to say, but I appreciate it. And I'll put it Healing Center Organizing, Dr. Sean Jr. Wright, Dr. Monique Miles. I'm blessed to be a humble servant with the Forum fam. I'll put it in the chat. Thank you for letting me share. Much respect.
No, absolutely. Thank you. And is there a story I think about your experience that you haven't seen on screen that you really would have wanted to see or that you think would impact other people around you?
Is that my follow-up for
Yeah,
me?
for you. Yeah, yeah.
Dito, the blended family.
Hmm,
The fact that I didn't notice then, my biological parents were literally dealing with their own demons.
absolutely.
And it was my bonus mother, may she rest in peace, Cynthia Alexander, who raised me when I thought my bio parents didn't even want me. And here it is, this woman, this earthly angel, raising me when my dad was literally struggling with addiction and my mom was in Oklahoma. So again, the big homie, Thomas Lee, like those parents and mentors in your life that you don't even see and know, people don't even know about my story. But thank you for asking that. I'm getting chill bumps. Much love.
Of course. Thank you so much. Um, Now I think it's a question for all of you as we kind of get into um, the end of this and we open up for Q&A for the attendees. Um, when stories repeatedly portray system impacted youth as dangerous or broken, what does that make easier for society to justify? And anybody can answer. I can also go teacher and start pointing out names.
Maybe that they're not worth supporting.
Yes. Anybody else?
I don't want to be that guy, but I'll be that guy. Whether it be ICE or the death by folks who are supposed to protect and serve.
I'll just add, Nina, I think it has huge implications for policy because I believe that the way that people think about certain issues is a driver for what we expect our leaders to take action on. And in thinking about policies in itself and the level of investments, that kind of gives you a sense of what our country, what our federal, state, and local systems actually care about. If those investments are just touching the surface and really not making any deep cuts into the major needs of our young people, then again it all starts and it generates from how people are thinking about these issues. And I think we're talking to the choir here, everybody that's present on this call. We know what the issues are. We're out there advocating and lifting our voices in every possible way. But I think ultimately we got to also, like I said, leverage all the hidden opportunities that are in a ton of these films and TV shows to help people learn. I'll just want to plug Arlena for a second. The video of her as a part of the PBS series that's getting a lot of interest is absolutely fantastic. It is an incredible video. I encourage everybody to watch. Certainly a whole nother way of thinking about some of the topics that we are sharing today and discussing. So it's a great starting point. But again, it does drive policy. And it's really important that if we're going to match policy with change and creating better conditions, we've got to make sure that again that we elevate these issues to a much higher level like we're doing today.
I think that follows really well into my next question for you all. If we had the same conversation 5 years from now, what do you guys think would be successes or wins? Like, what would you want to have happen 5 years from now? And we can go full, pie in the sky, or it can also be the kind of the really day to day, week to week, month to month changes that we all work so hard for.
Well,
We survived 2026.
Jamil, you can go first. Go ahead.
Look, big homie. I was bringing light and love the surviving of 2026, 5 years from now. Like, remember when and how we continue. We will overcome. Like we are overcoming. But that's the Gemini in me. Like I'm going. I done went through too much hell to not understand the joy at the end. I know that personally. So I was bringing light and love, but there's a level of like 5 years from now. I know. Because we are here, like I feel like our tribe is growing in the collective action, no matter what. And this is me understanding the bigger picture of society, understanding um negative outcomes that may occur, evil always present, but I'm always optimistic. So pie in the sky. I said this when I first started with the Forum Fam. I'm blessed the fact that, okay, as much as I was hired as a young leader, I literally just support them in their role now. We have consultants in every region now, and it was only two of us in the beginning. So I know I believe in the power of testifying too. So go ahead, Doc. I'm sorry, Brother Lee.
No, you're fine. Thank you, Jamil. Nina, I would say real plainly, 5 years from now, every single young person aging out of foster care has access to support, housing, and the kind of skill building network of professionals to help them uh, be successful and go after their hopes and dreams all across the country. Right now, the data shows us that about 75% of all foster youth across the country have access to those kinds of services. That's a shame. So that's got to get fixed immediately. I think two, what would be different is how stories about foster youth, how they start to fit within the new way of asset framing that's been talked about today. That we're not talking about their traumas as a ultimate defining characteristic of who they are, but as again just a component of many triumphs that they've been able to overcome. And then finally, hopefully that, thinking about your last question, that we'll see investments being made across the country that are doing more than just preparing young people to become great renters and not and people who are not in need of a system, but also helping prepare young people and future-proof them for how the world will be changed by technology, how the world will be changed by some of the geopolitical changes and conflicts that are happening in the world that'll prepare them for some of these tough economies that we're asking young people to have to contend with on a daily basis. Prepare them for all of that. That's what they deserve, and nothing less. That's what I imagine in the next 5 years, and certainly that's what I plan on putting my shoulder to the wheel to focus on for those 5 years to make sure that happens.
Absolutely. That would be incredible. And you guys are already doing such incredible work. And what about the role of media, Angela, with all of this in terms of thinking of the next 5 years and what we can do with entertainment and storytelling and video sharing platforms like YouTube?
Yeah, I mean, for me and YouTube Kids, we hope to see more of this content, more diverse story, more diverse perspectives along this topic, and hoping that people create more content so we can highlight it for our youth, and so they feel, taking the words of or quoting Arlena, that they're seen and they also feel empowered too. So some more content. And maybe we can do the CSS playlist every year. We'll see.
Hey, don't jump. This
We
was a
have
good
five
time.
of them.
This was a
Yeah.
good time, We love anything that gets us the opportunity to highlight the incredible work of the folks in this call and further kind of reach our messaging, which is what our two playlists have done over the couple years. Okay, let's hear from the participants audience. I'm gonna, for some reason, I don't know what's going on. I cannot find the Q&A setting, so we're gonna use polls to launch a question. Hopefully you can all see that. And ask any questions that you're curious about for the participants. It can be for one, it can be for all of them. Or I can just keep asking questions that I have.
I have a question, Nina, but I couldn't put it in the chat.
Oh, you then ask
It didn't allow me.
I'll ask Lisa, but turn your camera on so we can see.
I don't think I can.
Oh, sorry, that's on me. Sorry, I have the ultimate power. Uh, there you go.
Okay. Okay. This is just a really generative conversation for me. And I have that's not a quick question. I'm wondering how people are thinking about representing individuals who are systems facing versus representing systems. Like I think that there's also a level of the representation that is about accurately representing the criminal justice system, for example, or the welfare system or the, foster care system, child welfare system that is about power and that is about racism and discrimination and historically like really unequal systems. And so I'm just curious about what you all think about the impetus there. Is there one or another avenue that feels more fruitful or productive for your goals? Do you see more challenges trying to approach it from different ways, or just what's the relationship between those two levels of representation?
Alicia, I really appreciate that question. I think there should absolutely be more content to be able to tell the story about how the systems are working. And that could also be a great catalyst for some of the systems change work that needs to accompany or at least follow after those stories are told. I think that's a huge area of opportunity for those that are in the world of making content and being creative. I think that's an area that we have not explored deep enough. So I think it's a huge opportunity there, and love that you brought that up as one of the things that we can do more on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jamil, looks like you have some thoughts.
Yeah, and thank you, Doc. There's a love for asking that question because there's the big homie Steve Patrick always says, Aspen is like a grassroots grass top. So in my role with grass tops at Aspen, there's a level of like seeing and advocating on the Fed level when it comes to the injustice system, but then even the lived experience of juvie, right? So I live in PA, so there's a level of like we are a purple state, we can go any kind of way, right? But then on a local level, so I'm going a little deeper. So locally, I literally serve on a gun violence intervention, which does when you talk about social work, the intervention, prevention, and then even the treatment. So the intervention and prevention is just as bad to me is where it starts before it gets. I talked about those 2 to 3 years they're already building prisons versus schools. So I think representation is everything, but I've learned how to show up in those different roles versus like I'm not going to argue with someone who know and is intentionally trying to fight the fact that we're trying to divest and put more money into our schools and after school programming, if y'all feel me. That's a touchy subject, Doc, but thank you for asking it. But we're multi-dimensional people. So however you flow is how you show up, but there's a knowledge of self that you have to understand that I'm still learning about. So thank you for asking that. That was heavy. Much respect.
Thank you so much. I'm not trying to read oh, here we go. Here's our question from the audience. How do media portrayals influence policy decisions, foster parent recruitment, or public attitudes towards youth? Like, how have you guys experienced the impact of media portrayals on your daily lives and the work that you all do?
Is that a question for like you guys doing the work or?
No, you too, Arlena, because you're also in terms of like how have media portrayals impacted your experience in terms of what people think they know about you and your life and your experiences?
It seemed, I guess it impacted my life by seeing, um, sorry, I actually don't really know how to answer this question.
That's totally fair. What about kind of policies and that kind of advocacy work in terms of Thomas and Jamil and your work?
I, I, th- I think the probably the most common reaction and response that I get from people is that we're doing some incredibly complicated and hard work, almost so much so that there's probably nothing to be done. Like
Mm,
there's no amount of resources support that's going to help change this. It's like a cause that's too big to fix. And that, of course, is the very last thing we need people thinking about. I'm also not the funnest person at a cocktail party if I'm there. When people ask, what do you do for a living? I can't just tell them I'm in finance, or I can't tell them, I'm an attorney. There's a much bigger story to be told. I
mhm.
work with young people aging out of foster care. And and of course, I have to do it in such a succinct way to try to get them to ask more, because I don't want them to be sympathetic. I actually want them to be inspired to want to become a believer and lean in some way. So again, the knee-jerk response is always, this sounds like a really big and hard issue that probably can never be resolved. When it's quite the obvious, when it was quite the opposite, I'm sorry. It's quite the opposite, where if we all realize that we have a role and we have a level of responsibility as being a part of this village, we can absolutely change the story. And when we talk about, young people, aging out of foster care, then it doesn't become some unwieldy project. It actually becomes something that we can all take action on and do something about and make some remarkable change in a short amount of time. In your idea about what do we want to see things like, we could absolutely solve this problem in the next 5 years. This is one of the more solvable problems out of all the many problems that we are thinking about on a daily basis that we can fix. So the pathway is there. We know we have the knowledge, we have the expertise. It's everywhere amongst us. The question now is about willpower. Where are we going to muster the willpower to do something about it and finish the job that we all set out to do?
Thank you so much. I think that's a perfect way for us to end our webinar today. But before we head out, is there anything you all like to share with our audience before we keep going with our work?
Nina, I just want to say many thanks to the Center for Scholars and Storytellers for our partnership. It has been wonderful. Thank you for getting Arlena deeply in the work. I think she really appreciates the opportunity, and I know you all are blown away by the level of intelligence and just real smarts that she brings to the table. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of the content that comes from her work with all of you. And also thank you for the playlist that we've been able to share, and love that people are responding to it with such excitement. And hopefully that we can keep this momentum going. And the only way to do it well is do it together. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that to thank you guys. You guys probably made the most impact versus what I seen on the screen. You guys made me feel like I wanted to take ownership of my agency and inspire others to do that. So I thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, make sure I give y'all flowers too, Nina, Amy. You already know, and even coming into the Forum Fam, working with our young leaders. The collective story, the collective clarity, the narrative. So much respect. Thank y'all. And Doc, Brother Lee, you already know the brotherly love continues. Thank you for being a big homie, like watching me grow. Like I'm still Jamil. Much respect, y'all.
Gotta tell you, it seems like yesterday we were all together up in Colorado, sir. So I miss that. We're gonna have to find a way to do it again soon.
Yeah, same for me. Thank you so much. Thank you, CSS. Thank you, everyone who were in the videos, who created the videos, and a team that, again, like if there's no content, we can't highlight it. So the fact that you're able to make it, create it, and yeah, just a great partnership overall. So thank you.
Thank you all so much. I mean, our NCSI work would be nowhere without our incredible partners at First Place for Youth and the Aspen Institute, and we would be nowhere when it comes to narrative change and working with entertainment if we didn't have champions like you, Angela, in the companies we work with. So thank you all so much. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day and week, and we'll see you in the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much. Take care.